actually says got it. There we go. All right, well, welcome to the CEO Forum, and the theme for this one is the employment challenge. The reason I picked that topic was obviously employment expense is far and away your largest expense in a brokerage. And it's been a tough challenge for the last 3 or 4 years, finding and keeping good people as employees at large reacted to COVID and working from home and all the changes we've been through. So as you look at your business plan for next year, if I were in your shoes, I'd be trying to figure out how much am I going to have to spend on employment expenses, recruiting fees, things of that nature. Do I have an elephant in the boardroom when it comes to compensation levels? Am I going to have to be giving bumps to people? What should I be planning? So I don't envy you the challenge of having to answer all those questions, but it did occur to me that it might be worthwhile having Stefan join us and share his knowledge and experience with impact recruitment. So some of you know him, some of you don't. So Stefan, let me turn it over to you with an opening question. For those who don't know you and your company, could you give us a brief profile on Impact and your personal role with the firm?
Yeah, of course. And thanks for having me, Rick. Really appreciate the thought. So I'm Stefan Rolf. I'm one of the associate directors here for Impact Recruitment, their insurance division. Joined Impact 4 years ago. Long story short, I was tasked with building the division for insurance. We now work with over 150 different insurance companies, from MGAs, direct insurers, brokerages, and we run a team of 6, or I run a team of 6 out of 6 provinces across Canada. So that's the outreach. We recruit anything from junior personal lines candidates all the way to the more senior partnership level producers, even with or without books of business, and everything in between.
Great. So you're out there in the trenches day in, day out, dealing with the people that we deal with. So over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a huge increase in employee churn. It's always been a challenge, but it's become a real challenge over the last little while. We've heard from some people that the situation has calmed down. What's your perspective on that?
Calm down seems, I wouldn't say it's too realistic, really. We're still seeing salaries on the rise, more so in Ontario than where I am in BC. However, still salaries are on the increase in terms of expectations from candidates. So again, I don't know the statistics and the facts. It's only from the clients that we currently are dealing with and the candidates we deal with. However, the competition is fierce. It has been since I started, and it continues to be. We don't actually see a slowdown within our division and our numbers. In fact, we had our record last quarter in Q3 since I started, and actually last month was our biggest month in terms of number of placements for the year as well. So we're still seeing a lot of shift in terms of candidates looking, and indeed companies on the looking to hire. Yeah.
So you're not seeing it slowing down. I'm disappointed to hear that, but that's the way it is. Well, we might as well face the facts. Back in March of this year, Impact published a salary guide, which we were all very happy to see, because there's a lack of information on comparative compensation levels. Have there been any significant changes to what that report reported in terms of salary levels? And if there have been changes, in which job categories have they taken place?
Yeah, so I can tell you there have been some changes, but before I go into the changes, I'll also tell you that the guides were made up from only, I say only, it's quite a significant amount, but only from the last 4 years of data that we have. And it's data that we've seen from candidates and clients. So it can be perceived as a bit generic because it's mainly focused towards the Vancouver surrounding areas and Toronto surrounding areas. And again, some of the roles, like the underwriting roles, we'd only picked up maybe 2 years ago. So again, the data is based on maybe only 24 months for that. However, there has been some changes. We would say it's still on the rise. So if we were to publish one today, you would see those numbers increase slightly. However, it's not a significant increase. It is on the rise, but it's not jumping hugely. So, and that again is more so in Toronto. Here in BC, there are some changes as well, but not as significant as Toronto. In terms of where we're seeing these changes and the roles, it's the basics, kind of the CSRs, the account managers, mostly construction, that we're seeing. Anything in that kind of commercial construction vertical. We're just seeing a high demand, and with a high demand, clients are willing to pay more because they need these people. So those are the most pressing. However, there's changes across most, if not all, of the roles we've seen.
Okay, well, that sounds somewhat encouraging. When you're talking to individuals who are actively looking for a new job, what are their motivators for wanting to make a move? Well, I guess what I'm driving at here is, what are their complaints about their current job?
So the obvious being compensation. That's probably the main driver. That goes hand in hand with what we've seen over the last 4 years since COVID, which is the flexibility on remote work, whether that's fully remote or hybrid. We get a lot of candidates asking about remote work and hybrid, and oftentimes if there's consideration for remote work or hybrid, these candidates are often willing to engage in looking at other opportunities, especially if they are 5 days a week in office at the moment, or only 1 or 2 days a week from the office, or from home, should I say. So those two factors are the driving force. Other driving forces that are very kind of visible are workloads. So we get candidates that tell us they've got an unmanageable workload, and it's probably because we're seeing the need for hire as well. So when client or brokerages, for example, have got 2 or 3 missing people in their departments, the work doesn't stop. The work has to be picked up, and whoever it's being picked up by is feeling the stress of that. So if a company isn't backfilling people that are leaving, or dealing with getting people in due to the growth of a certain book or a department or the company as a whole, we're seeing people take on more and more work, which again starts off manageable, but as it increases, it can become unmanageable to the point where they do want to exit the business.
Okay, thank you. Let's flip that around. When you're in the role of attempting to recruit a candidate, a targeted employee that you're going after, what are the reasons that they give you for why they're unwilling to consider making a move? I guess what I'm driving at here is, what are the characteristics of an employer that makes it hard for you to pry a candidate away?
Yeah. So again, very similar answers, plus a couple more I can elaborate on. But again, the compensation. If someone is fully remote or hybrid and they're happy with that setup, and they've got a flexible working model, maybe 1 day a week in the office or 2 days a week or maybe less. Maybe it's kind of 2 days a month or every 2 weeks, and that they're pretty happy with that. So, you know, again, if we're driving a role that is either 5 days a week in office or 3 days a week in office, it's hard to compete with that, even with a salary increase on top of that, because of the salary or the money they're saving by not commuting to work so often and whatnot. Yeah, that's a real benefit for them. So those are the main driving factors. Others, just feeling valued by the business, by their managers. You know, they really like it. They've got a great team, a great atmosphere, and they you know, unless there is a silly offer, quote unquote, you know, they're not really going to consider a move because they are happy and they've got a clear growth progression plan outlined for them. Very important again, and I could have said that to your last question on why people look to leave, is because they don't have that clear plan set out, and they're just kind of in this role and they can't see any growth or any movement, and they're taking on all this role with no promise of ever progressing. So right. Yeah. Couple of other points. You know, we're seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions at the moment. So that, again, to your previous question, could be a driving factor of people wanting to leave. But it could also be a driving factor of people wanting to stay, because it can be this exciting new time where, you know, people don't know what to expect, and there's this whole new promise of growth and where the company's heading. So yeah, people may want to stick that out for the time being.
I may be asking the same question again, so forgive me, but when you post or advertise for a position, what seem to be the attributes of that posting that get the most positive reaction from potential candidates?
Yeah, good question. And it's quite a loaded question, or shall I say that there are some loaded answers there. I guess to post in the right place as well, it needs to be looked at. If no one's looking at your postings, you know, it doesn't matter what it says at the end of the day. So when we post on our website, we get more traction from that than we do with Indeed. And that's typically because we have a very niche 5,000 plus candidates in insurance that kind of check our job boards and view or click, as the data analysts say. So where it's posted is important as well. So any of these insurance job boards, I'd imagine are great or better than, you know, just a kind of generic job board. In terms of what people like to see, and again, it's a tough one because everyone's hiring. You know, there's so many. If you type in commercial account manager into any job board these days, there's so many. So you've really got to kind of separate yourselves and differentiate and really highlight the opportunity that's on offer. Again, going into the growth plans, having a salary range, benefits. People like to see that. Candidates have always liked to see that, no matter what role it is. They need to see a range, and ideally a range that isn't 20, 30, 40K, you know, in range. So any, like, if we're seeing 50 to 100K, that's candidates immediately turned off by that, because they automatically think, oh yeah, it looks good, it looks like that 100K is going to come, but the experience is there where it's, you know, an offer of 55 or 60, and to reach that max salary range would be someone almost unicorn, and we've all heard that term in the business as well. So to have a realistic range on there helps, and again, to express any remote days if there are any, but I guess the biggest one is to really drive the culture and drive what the opportunity actually is, and how it differs from your neighbors next door.
Okay. So Dave and Sandy and Shane would like to know the secret sauce for bulletproofing their best employees. And if you boil down everything you've talked about, what advice would you give them for making their best employees job poach resistant?
It's a great question. Let me open this up and ask if anyone has done a stay, or does anyone know what a stay interview is? Has anyone heard of it? Yeah, I'm seeing some heads. So stay interviews are very effective, and it's quite a new idea that came out. I'd never heard of it before I reached Canada. Maybe it's the industry I'm in now with insurance, but never really heard of it before. But some of my clients are doing it, and it's very effective. So pulling your top performers out to one side, people that you don't want to lose, people that have been with you long term, and you think they're great, and you think they're never going to leave. Do spend some time with them, pull them to one side, and get their ideas. And again, a loaded question, referring to their ideas, but acting on it as well, not just asking the question, but really acting on their input and their ideas. But the one-to-one meetings, you know, it's a given, as well as the fair compensation. If someone leaves or hands a notice in, and you counter to try and keep them, you know, although it works, it can work. Just offer that up front. You know, I know it's easier said than done. You don't just want to chuck money away. But if there really are your top performers, and you know, and you have got something to incentivize them to stay or keep them happy or make them even more happy, it's worth doing. It's worth putting that extra step in early on, because once they have decided to hand their notice in, this isn't a 5-minute thought process. This has been coming for weeks, if not months. And, you know, once they finally do that, that's kind of the end stage. And yeah, a counter offer may keep them for a few months, but you never really know until you ask.
Okay, that's great advice and great feedback. I've been hogging the question, Mike, here. Let me turn it over to Sandy and Shane and Dave. Guys, what would you like to ask of Stefan?
How much do they value pension and benefits?
If I had to rate it out of 10, it's up there. I'd say a minimum 8. Yeah.
Okay.
We have seen candidates decline offers that are very fairly compensated, that are on a hybrid schedule. Everything they needed or asked for, they got, but they didn't have RRSP, for example. We've seen candidates decline that. Benefits as well, you know, there are some clients that their benefits are better than others, you know, and it shows if they've got better benefits package where they are now, and they, you know, and it's a funny one, Sandy, and it's a great question, but there's ways to probe, because someone could have the best benefits package in the world. Like me, my benefits package is fairly good, but I don't use anything. You know, I don't have these massages that I can do, or go and see a podiatrist or whatever it is. But it just looks good, and people do like to have it. But when you really break it down, if you ever speak to candidates and benefits is a factor and it comes up, you could almost ask them to break it down, and, you know, how many massages do you get, and how many times do you go to the dentist, or whichever. And oftentimes it's like, yeah, it's a nice to have, but it's not essential. So when you kind of do the thought processes like that, it kind of works in your favor. But it's important to have some coverage. Again, there's some clients we use that don't have any, and we struggle to recruit for these businesses.
Yeah. Okay.
A good question.
Stefan, I'm curious, at your firm, how do you charge? Do you work on a contingent basis, or is there upfront fees involved? I'm just curious.
So there's two ways. The primarily we are contingency based, so we do everything up front. We interview candidates at least twice, and then we present them to you on a specific role that we've talked about already. From there, we can do background checks, reference checks, police checks, criminal, everything else is done. And then you would only pay once a candidate has received an offer and accepted that offer and is completely happy. Second option is a retained search, which basically puts you at the front of the queue, which is becoming more and more relevant now because, again, everyone's hiring and we are only a team of 6, although at the end of this month we should be 7 because we are hiring. But with a team of 6 dealing with at any given time 60 or 70 active insurance businesses for multiple roles, we don't have enough staff to cope with the demand. So as a retained search, you would pay less fees overall. You would pay 50% of the fees up front, and then we get to work from day one. And we are exclusive, working with you until the job's done. And then when that job's done, the remaining 50% is paid. So that is becoming more and more popular. Again, just because you jump in the queue. If you were to give us a job today, you know, unless we've got active candidates in the area, if we needed to search for a more niche role, I'd love to say we'd get round to it straight away, but you know what it's like. Yeah, we'd get to it as soon as we could, you know, which is, it can be fairly quick, but this way with the retained search, you jump to number 1 in the queue.
Curious, roughly what percentage of the candidates that you find a placement for relocate to the opportunity?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
How many people are typically prepared to move, physically move their
I see.
residence to accept a position?
It's not uncommon. It depends on the role. With remote work, we see it obviously more and more frequently. We've got people living, working for a Vancouver firm or Toronto firm, getting downtown salaries that have moved to Calgary, or they've moved to the outskirts of BC or Ontario, where the housing is cheaper, the cost of living is cheaper. We've also seen it the other way. We've seen, actually this month, we relocated someone from Winnipeg to downtown Toronto. And yeah, they're basically setting up a new life. So it depends on the role, depends on the kind of package, if there's a relocation package involved. If not, makes it a bit more difficult, but still not impossible. But it's possible, yeah, to answer your question in a long-winded way.
Okay, thanks.
Jane, anything on your mind?
Nothing on my mind, no.
Like at all?
You know,
Stefan, I have one question. How important is aligned purpose or the ability to use your natural talents on a day-to-day basis to the people that you talk to that are either looking for or you're looking to place?
I have to say very important. You know, I do, but it does come down to the experience of recruitment. So our team are recruiters, not necessarily with an insurance background, and it really doesn't matter. I come from an engineering background. I did some white collar stuff and some blue collar stuff, but it's all engineering. We've got a lady, Maria, who services Ontario and Quebec. She comes from a professional services, a recruitment background. We've got another lady who does Alberta. She comes from an actuarial background, which does help with insurance. But again, no one's got, you know, no one knew coming into this team what a CSR was and what it meant, you know, what the difference between a commercial lines person and a personal lines person. When we first heard the word marketer, we thought it was a social media promoter, you know. So the ability to recruit is key. The knowledge of insurance comes after. So if I've got your question right, I think that's the answer. Yeah, you're referring to.
But the people that you are actually looking to recruit for the insurance brokerages, how
Right.
important is it to them that
see.
they have an aligned purpose with the organization that they're considering being hired for?
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, that makes more sense to the question. Sorry, my mistake.
No problem.
It's important, you know, they need a sense of belonging. And, you know,
Yeah.
although we see resumes and we see these candidates that have had a job here for 12 months, another job for 18 months, and another job for 12 months. And it's a lot of people, including my clients, won't look at them. They'll read the resume and they won't look at these people. They won't interview them. They won't speak to them. And it's a shame, because some of them could be really good fits and they don't mean to jump around. Again, I'm talking the odd. There's a few. I don't want to paint everyone with the same brush, but on the other hand, there are some job hoppers that will always be job hoppers, and that's just the way it is in every industry. But some people have had bad experiences. They've had false promises, and through their own initiatives, and fair play to them for not settling for less than their worth, have picked up and left after 12 months, you know, and they've stuck it out for 12 months, although it's not being what they've promised. And they go to another. And some people have had that happen twice, 3 times in a row. They're getting very kind of demotivated, and they just want a sense of belonging and a purpose with a new brokerage. They want to be looked after. They want to feel valued. So it's very important. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I've always thought that as well. So having you confirm it's good. And I think there is a lot more people nowadays. Younger people are more likely to hop because they are looking for what they're looking for. If they don't get what
Exactly.
they're looking for, then they move on.
And to
You can't
speak
blame them for
more,
that.
no, that's right. And to speak more to that as well, I mean, with the cost of living at the moment, and with everyone hiring, you know, a 5K, 7K increase in salary is significant to these people that are on 50, 40, 60, whatever it may be. So again, the loyalty factor, it doesn't really come into play when you've only been in insurance a couple of years, you know. And that, again, the value of offering what you can early on rather than having people hand their notice in and whatnot. It works. It can work. So yeah, another piece of advice, not to discount you know, what may look like job hopping on a resume. You know, it's 15 minutes of your time to always pick up the phone and speak to someone. It's the worst case scenario, you've wasted 10-15 minutes. Best case scenario, you're on the phone to your next hire and they could be with you for years.
Yeah.
Dave, I think you've had some recent success in making hires where cultural fit was the deciding factor. So you've made that work.
Yeah, for sure. You know, as we get more deliberate with our desired culture and you know, fit, and use a couple of tools to try to assess, you know, candidates, it's definitely cultural fits, frankly, the #1 criteria we would use.
You've actually held on to people because of your culture, from what I've understood from Barb.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. And there's always people, even you could be the best business, there's always people that don't like it, you know. And there's always people that do love it, even though you may have a bad reputation. It's not painting everyone with that same brush, but a reputation is important. Again, we've had candidates that don't want to be put forward to some of my clients because they've got a bad reputation. We try and mitigate that and say there's various things we do to come around it. Some of them work, some of them eventually do progress to interview stage and then eventually get hired, and it works. But some of them are really adamant, I'm not going to this place because of so and so. They left there and this is the environment they had there, and I don't even want to consider it. So yeah, again, it's reputation and culture is important. It can play a big factor.
Great. Well, good conversation and great input, Stefan. Thank you. Anything else before we wrap up? All right. Thank you, Stefan, very much for taking time out of your busy workday to be with us. And thanks to you CEOs for being part of this. The event has been recorded, as you know. So Sadie will send the recording out to you. Feel free to share it with anyone else on your team who you think might benefit. So-
I should stop the recording now.
Yes, please.